My name's Angela, and it all started when Sarah was 10. That's my daughter, by the way. She was the light of my life, the reason I woke up every morning with a smile on my face. But then, in the blink of an eye, everything changed. I remember that day like it was yesterday. Tom, my husband, came home late from work. Nothing unusual there, but the look on his face told me something was wrong. "Angela, we need to talk," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've met someone else, I'm leaving." Just like that, our family was torn apart. Sarah was devastated. She'd always been a daddy's girl, and now her world was crumbling around her. I tried to shield her from the worst of it, but how do you protect a child from that kind of heartbreak? The next few months were a blur. I threw myself into work, determined to provide for Sarah and give her everything she needed. I worked long hours, took on extra projects, anything to keep us afloat and my mind occupied. Sarah, meanwhile, retreated into herself. She stopped talking about Tom, refused to take his calls. It broke my heart to see her hurting so much. I eventually convinced her to see a psychologist. Dr. Peterson was kind and patient, but even she struggled to break through Sarah's walls. Miss Thompson, Dr. Peterson said after one particularly difficult session, "Sarah's experiencing a lot of complex emotions. It's going to take time for her to process everything." Time. But as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, I started to wonder if time was really healing our wounds or just burying them deeper. I tried to move on, to create a new normal for us. But every time I thought about dating again, Sarah would act out. It was subtle at first, a slammed door here, a sarcastic comment there. But as she got older, her reactions became more intense. I remember the first time I brought a man home. His name was David, a kind-hearted accountant I'd met through work. I thought Sarah would like him. He was funny, loved dogs just like she did, and even offered to help her with her math homework. But the moment David walked through our door, Sarah's face clouded over. "Sarah, this is David," I said, trying to keep my voice light and casual. "I thought we could all have dinner together." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "What? You think you can just replace Dad? That we can play house and everything will be okay?" David shifted uncomfortably beside me. "Maybe I should go," he mumbled. But before I could respond, Sarah grabbed a plate from the table and hurled it to the floor. The second plate joined the first on the floor, followed by a third and a fourth. By the time I managed to grab Sarah's arms, our dining room looked like a war zone. David left that night, and I never heard from him again. As I cleaned up the broken dishes, tears streaming down my face, I realized that moving on wasn't going to be as simple as I'd hoped. Sarah's pain ran deep, and it was clear that healing our fractured family was going to be a long, difficult journey. The years flew by in a whirlwind of work, school projects, and teenage drama. Before I knew it, Sarah was 18 and heading off to college. It took a while to adjust, but slowly, I started to rediscover myself. I joined a book club, started taking yoga classes. For the first time in years, I looked in the mirror and saw Angela, not just Sarah's mom or the workaholic divorcee. And then I met Richard. He was in my yoga class, a widower with grown kids of his own. We started with coffee after class, which turned into dinner dates, which turned into something more. But my newfound happiness was short-lived. The first time Sarah came home for a visit, she immediately sensed something was different. "You've redecorated," she said, her eyes narrowing as she took in the new throw pillows and artwork. "Are you seeing someone?" I hesitated, then decided to be honest. "I've met someone, yes. His name is Richard. He's very nice. I think you'd like him." Sarah's face darkened. "Don't you dare bring him here," she spat. "This is our home, not some dating playground." "Sarah," I said, trying to stay calm, "I understand this is difficult for you, but I'm allowed to have a life too. You're in college now, building your own life. Can't I do the same?" "Oh, so now that I'm gone, you're just going to replace me? Is that it?" "Of course not. Sarah, no one could ever replace you. But that doesn't mean I have to be alone forever." The argument went on for hours. By the end, Sarah had threatened to drop out of college, accusing me of ruining her life and her education. "My grades are already slipping because I'm so worried about you replacing our family," she yelled. "Sarah, that's not fair," I pleaded. Your grades are your responsibility. I'm not doing anything wrong by trying to be happy." But my words fell on deaf ears. Sarah stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Our phone calls became tense affairs. Every conversation, no matter how it started, would inevitably turn to Richard. I felt trapped, torn between my love for my daughter and my desire for personal happiness. 4 years passed in a blink. Sarah graduated college, and I couldn't have been prouder. Despite our strained relationship, I'd never stopped loving her, or hoping that one day, we'd find our way back to each other. I was tidying up the living room when I heard a car pull up. Peering out the window, I saw Sarah step out, but she wasn't alone. A tall, handsome young man was with her, his arm draped casually over her shoulders. The front door burst open. Sarah waltzed in, practically glowing. "Mom, this is Jake, my fiancé." Jake stepped forward, offering his hand. "It's nice to meet you, Mrs. Thompson. Sarah's told me so much about you." I shook his hand automatically, my mind still reeling. "It's lovely to meet you too, Jake, and please, call me Angela." Sarah was practically bouncing on her toes. "We're getting married, Mom. We want to do it soon, like next month. And we need money for the wedding." The demand hung in the air between us. Jake shifted uncomfortably, but Sarah stared at me, chin jutted out defiantly. "How much?" I asked quietly. Sarah named a figure that made my eyes widen. It was a substantial chunk of my savings, but if it would make Sarah happy, if it would help heal the rift between us. "Okay," I said. "I'll transfer it to your account tomorrow." Sarah's face lit up. She threw her arms around me, something she hadn't done in years. "Thanks, Mom. You're the best." They left a couple of days later, promising to be in touch about wedding details. I waited anxiously for an invitation, hoping that this wedding might be a new beginning for all of us. But the invitation never came. Instead, 3 weeks later, Sarah showed up at my door, alone and in tears. "He left me," she sobbed into my shoulder. "He said I was too jealous, too controlling. He said I had issues." My heart broke for her. Despite everything, she was still my little girl, and seeing her in pain was unbearable. "Oh, sweetheart," I murmured, stroking her hair. "I'm so sorry." Sarah pulled back, her face contorted with anger and grief. "He's just like Dad. They're all the same. They leave when things get tough." Sarah moved back in after that. She quickly found a job at a local marketing firm but showed no signs of wanting to move out again. And I didn't push her. Maybe it was guilt, maybe it was hope that we could repair our relationship. Then, just as I was turning 48 and Sarah 24, my world tilted on its axis once again. What I thought was just persistent stomach trouble turned out to be something far more sinister: intestinal cancer. The words felt like a death sentence. I sat Sarah down one evening, my hands shaking as I tried to find the words. "Sweetie, there's something I need to tell you," I began. "I've been diagnosed with cancer. Intestinal cancer." The color drained from Sarah's face. "What? No, that can't be right." "I'm afraid it is," I said gently. "I start treatment next week." Sarah burst into tears, throwing her arms around me. "Oh, Mom, I'm so sorry. I'll take care of you, I promise. We'll get through this together." Her words warmed my heart, even as fear gnawed at my insides. I quit my job the next day, thankful for the savings I'd accumulated over the years. At least we wouldn't have to worry about money on top of everything else. The first round of chemotherapy hit me like a freight train. I'd heard stories about how tough it could be, but nothing prepared me for the reality. The nausea, the fatigue, the way my body seemed to turn against me, it was all overwhelming. Sarah, true to her word, took time off work to care for me. At first, her enthusiasm was touching. She'd bring me tea, help me to the bathroom, even read to me when my eyes were too tired to focus on the pages. But as the days wore on, the toll of caregiving became apparent. My intestinal issues worsened, making it difficult and often painful to use the bathroom. After particularly rough bouts of chemo, I'd be too weak to clean myself properly. The first time Sarah had to help wash me, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Disgust, revulsion, whatever it was, it cut deep. As the weeks passed, Sarah's attitude shifted. The enthusiastic caregiver was replaced by someone who seemed to be constantly holding her breath around me. "Mom, you need to try to shower more," she'd say, wrinkling her nose. The smell. I knew she was right. The medications, the treatments, they all contributed to an unpleasant odor that seemed to cling to me no matter how much I washed. But hearing it from my daughter, seeing her wince when I walked past, it was humiliating. One morning, after a particularly rough night, Sarah came into my room with a determined look on her face. "Mom, I think it's time we hired a nurse," she said. "I need to get back to work, and you need more specialized care than I can provide. I'll talk to the clinic about getting someone assigned to us." Part of me wanted to argue, to insist that we could manage on our own. But the larger part, the part that had seen the look in Sarah's eyes when she had to clean me, knew she was right. The nurse they sent, Maria, was a godsend. Strong, capable, and infinitely patient, she handled my care with a professionalism that put both Sarah and me at ease. The house felt cleaner, more organized, and I found myself feeling more comfortable despite my worsening condition. But Sarah, surprisingly, seemed agitated by Maria's presence. "Do you think she needs to be here all the time?" she asked one evening, after Maria had left for the day. It's weird having a stranger in our house so much." I frowned. "Sarah, you know I need the help. Maria's been wonderful." Sarah fidgeted, not meeting my eyes. "I know, have you considered maybe moving to a care facility? Somewhere with round-the-clock professional care?" I stared at her, a mix of hurt and anger bubbling up inside me. "This is my home, Sarah. I'm not going anywhere." Sarah's face hardened. "Fine, I was just trying to help." She stormed out of the room, leaving me alone with my thoughts. The worst part was, I couldn't even blame her. She was young, with her whole life ahead of her. Taking care of a sick parent wasn't something she'd signed up for. One morning, as I ran my fingers through my hair, a clump came away in my hand. I stared at it, my throat tightening. I'd known this was coming, but seeing it happen was something else entirely. Sarah walked in just as I was examining the fallen hair. Her eyes widened, then narrowed in annoyance. "Great," she muttered. "Now there's going to be hair all over the house." Her words stung, but I tried to keep my voice steady. "I'm sorry, sweetie. I'll try to be careful." But over the next few days, as more and more of my hair fell out, Sarah's complaints grew louder. I couldn't take it anymore. The next time Maria came, I asked her to cut off what was left of my hair. When she was done, I looked in the mirror, barely recognizing the bald woman staring back at me. That's when Sarah walked in. She took one look at me and burst out laughing. "Oh my God," she giggled. "You look like a concentration camp prisoner." Weeks passed, and though the hair issue was resolved, Sarah's attitude didn't improve. She spent more and more time out of the house, coming home late and barely acknowledging my presence. Then, one afternoon, she breezed into my room with an announcement. "I'm having a party here this weekend." I blinked, surprised. "A party? Honey, I'm not feeling well. The noise. It would be too much. Could you maybe have it somewhere else?" Sarah's face darkened. "If you don't like it, why don't you go somewhere else for the night? Actually, that might be better. You won't have to be embarrassed in front of my friends, and we won't have to smell your illness." Her words hit me like a physical blow. With a strength I didn't know I still possessed, I pushed myself up from the bed. "This is my house, Sarah," I said, my voice low and hard. "If you don't like living here with me, then you can leave." Sarah's eyes widened in disbelief, then narrowed in anger. "You're so selfish," she screamed. "All you do is make everyone's life difficult. You know what? It would be better for everyone if you just died and stopped being such an inconvenience." Sarah seemed to realize what she'd said. For a moment I thought I saw a flicker of regret in her eyes, but then her face hardened again. Without another word, she stormed out of the room. I heard drawers slamming, closet doors banging. And then, the front door slammed shut, leaving the house in eerie silence. She'd left me, alone and sick, without even bothering to close the front door. As Sarah's car screeched away, leaving the front door wide open, I felt a chill run through me. With shaking hands, I reached for my phone and called Maria. "Angela, is everything okay?" Maria's concerned voice came through the speaker. "No," I whispered, my voice cracking. "Can you come over? Please?" Maria arrived in record time, her face etched with worry as she hurried inside. "What happened?" she asked, quickly closing and locking the door behind her. The story spilled out of me in a torrent of words and tears. Sarah's cruelty, her harsh words, her abrupt departure. I told Maria everything. She listened silently, her face a mix of shock and sympathy. When I finished, Maria sat next to me on the bed, taking my hand in hers. "Angela," she said gently, "I know it's not my place, but maybe it's time to focus on yourself. Your daughter. She's an adult now, and her behavior is her own choice." As I looked into Maria's kind eyes, something shifted inside me. She was right. I'd spent so long putting Sarah first, even at the cost of my own happiness. Where had it gotten me? "You're right," I said, straightening my shoulders. "From now on, I'm going to be selfish. I'm going to focus on getting better." Maria smiled, squeezing my hand. "That's the spirit. Now let's get you comfortable and talk about your treatment plan." The next few months were harder than anything I'd ever experienced. 2 more rounds of chemotherapy left me feeling hollowed out, a shadow of my former self. But I persevered. With Maria's help and my newfound determination, I fought the cancer with everything I had. Sarah never called. Not once. At first it hurt, a constant ache in my chest. But as the weeks turned into months, I found myself thinking of her less and less. My world narrowed to my treatments, my small victories, the quiet moments of peace in between the storms of sickness. Then, one sunny afternoon, my oncologist delivered the news I'd been praying for. "The cancer has receded, Angela," she said, a broad smile on her face. "You're in remission." I burst into tears, overwhelmed by relief and joy. I'd done it. I'd beaten cancer. I started taking short walks in the park near my house, rebuilding my strength bit by bit. The fresh air and sunshine worked wonders, both for my body and my spirit. As I lost weight, I realized none of my old clothes fit anymore. It was time for a change, in more ways than one. I donated my entire wardrobe to a local homeless shelter, keeping only a few sentimental pieces. Shopping for a new wardrobe was both exciting and bittersweet. Each new piece was a celebration of my survival, but also a reminder of all I'd been through. As I looked at myself in the dressing room mirror, I hardly recognized the woman staring back at me. She was thinner, yes, with short hair just starting to grow back, but there was a strength in her eyes that hadn't been there before. As my health improved, I found myself reassessing every aspect of my life. The big house I'd once loved now felt empty, a reminder of a family that no longer existed. It was time for a change. The process of selling the house and finding a new apartment was surprisingly invigorating. It felt like I was taking control of my life again, making decisions based on what I wanted, not what others expected of me. I found a small, cozy apartment that instantly felt like home. It was perfect for one person, with a sunny balcony where I could nurture a small garden. As I unpacked my new, smaller wardrobe into the closet, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in years. With the money from the house sale safely in my account, I made a decision that would have been unthinkable a year ago. I wasn't going back to work. My savings, combined with the house money, gave me enough financial security to focus on my recovery and on building the life I wanted. For 3 months, I settled into my new life. I joined a cancer survivors support group, started volunteering at a local animal shelter, and even took up painting. Slowly but surely, I was rediscovering joy. Then, one sunny afternoon, my phone rang. It was Jim, the realtor who had handled the sale of my house. "Angela?" "Hi, it's Jim. I hope I'm not bothering you, but... Well, the new owners of your old house are having a bit of a situation. They were wondering if I could give them your number." I frowned, concerned. "What kind of situation?" Jim hesitated. "They didn't give me many details, but it seems someone tried to break into the house. They thought you might know something about it." A cold feeling settled in my stomach. "Of course, Jim. You can give them my number." Barely an hour later, my phone rang again. This time, it was a man's voice I didn't recognize. "Miss Thompson? This is Robert Green, the new owner of your old house on Maple Street." a young woman showed up at our door yesterday. She tried to use a key to get in, and when that didn't work, she started kicking the door and yelling. My heart sank. I already knew where this was going. When I opened the door, Robert continued, she started screaming that this was her house, that she was supposed to inherit it after her mother's death. She seemed, well, unstable. I closed my eyes, fighting back tears. I'm so sorry, Mr. Green. That was my daughter, Sarah. We've been estranged for some time now. If she comes back, would you mind calling me? I need to talk to her. Of course, Robert agreed readily. I'll call you right away if she shows up again. After hanging up, I sat on my couch, staring blankly at the wall. Sarah thought I was dead. She hadn't even tried to confirm it, hadn't reached out to anyone. She'd just assumed and come to claim what she thought was hers. The call came sooner than I expected. Just a day after my conversation with Robert, my phone rang. She's here. Robert's voice was tense. And she's causing quite a scene. The drive to my old house was surreal. As I pulled up, I saw Sarah on the front lawn, gesticulating wildly at Robert and his wife, who stood in the doorway looking distressed. This is my house, Sarah was screaming. You have no right to be here. Get out. I took a deep breath and stepped out of the car. Sarah's back was to me, but Robert saw me. His eyes widened in recognition. Sarah, I called out, my voice steady despite my racing heart. She whirled around, her face a mask of shock that quickly morphed into anger. You're alive. What's going on? Why are these people in our house? It's not our house anymore, Sarah. I sold it. What she shrieked. You can't do that. It was supposed to be mine. I was counting on that inheritance. I felt a wave of sadness wash over me. Is that all you care about? The inheritance. I have debts, Sarah yelled, oblivious to the growing crowd of neighbors watching the spectacle. I needed that money. How could you do this to me? I shook my head, a bitter laugh escaping me. I'm sorry I disappointed you by not dying, Sarah. Sarah's eyes narrowed dangerously. You selfish scum, she spat. You've always only thought about yourself. Do you have any idea what I've been through? I need that money. No, I said, my voice firm. You abandoned me when I was sick, Sarah. You wished me dead. I owe you nothing. It would have been better if you had died, Sarah screamed, her face red with fury. You're useless. Dad was right to leave you. Her words hung in the air, sharp and painful, but this time they didn't cut as deep. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and all I saw was a stranger consumed by anger and entitlement. I turned to Robert and his wife, who were watching the scene with a mix of horror and pity. I'm so sorry for this, I said. If she comes here again, please don't hesitate to call the police. Then, without another glance at Sarah, I walked back to my car. As I opened the door, I heard Sarah's voice, shrill and desperate. Mom, you can't just leave. I need your help. I paused, my hand on the car door. For a moment I was tempted to turn back, to try one last time to reach the little girl I'd once known and loved. But as I looked at Sarah, all I saw was the woman who had abandoned me in my darkest hour, who had wished me dead for her own gain. Goodbye, Sarah, I said softly, then got into my car and drove away. The days that followed were difficult. I cried, I raged, I mourned for the relationship I'd lost. But slowly, as the days turned into weeks, I began to heal. Sarah never called, never came to my new apartment, and while a part of me would always love her, I realized that I could love her from a distance. I could wish her well without allowing her toxicity back into my life. I looked at the canvas before me, at the vibrant colors and bold strokes. It was a self-portrait, something I'd never had the courage to attempt before. The woman on the canvas looked back at me with eyes full of strength and serenity. As I picked up my brush to add the finishing touches, I smiled. This was my life now. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't what I'd planned, but it was mine. And for the first time in a long time, I was excited to see what the future might hold.